Cole Webley and I met around 2020 when Killing Two Lovers had played at Sundance. He really loved that film and wanted to know he was like, do you have any scripts laying around that I could read just to get an idea of my writing? And so Preston, his producer, was like, you really should consider Omaha. So when Cole ended up making it and went to Sundance, that was like everything I had thought it was going to do when I wrote the first draft of it.
Welcome to the Red, Green, Blue Podcast.
All right. Welcome to the RGB Podcast. Remember to like and subscribe. We're here with Robert Machoian, who is amazing because he has had several films in Sundance that he also actually sold. A little known fact about Sundance Film Festival, overwhelming majority of filmmakers that go in there don't sell their film and they're stuck with a ton of debt. And I've been in screenings where they actually fessed up to that. Like it's the last screening of the festival and people are saying, so what are you going to do now? It's like, we're going to go home and pay off our credit cards.
Yeah.
Been a great time. Bet, $200,000 ticket. That's what this journey was. But he actually sold them and he did them for a very reasonable price, which is really amazing. And he also he works with his kids and he writes and he directs and he's a DP and he does everything, which is pretty impressive. Anyway, first we'll just start out. He just had a movie that he wrote in Sundance just this last time. So
Yep.
What was it like handing off a script and not directing it yourself?
Yeah, that was a very exciting.
Was that your first time you've done that?
It's the first time I've ever done that. And I do want to say it's probably specifically because it was Cole.
Yeah.
And Cole Webley and I met around 2020 when Killing Two Lovers had played at Sundance. He really loved that film and wanted to know he was like, do you have any scripts laying around that I could read just to get an idea of my writing, because he was interested in having me do some rewrites on some scripts that he had. And I was like, oh yeah, I've got this one I've never been able to get made. And he read that script, and then we, as a result, ended up collaborating on another project that he had written, wanted me to kind of do rewrites on. And he was really anxious to shoot something. He was like, I really want to. And the project we were working on, it's a great script, but I was like, this is like $5 to $7 million. This isn't like something that you can really self-finance and take a big risk on.
Yeah.
And so Preston, his producer, was like, you really should consider Omaha. And so Cole went back, read it through the perspective of not me making it, but him making it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came to me and said, well, would you be really open to letting me direct this? And I was really ecstatic about it because I had tried to get it made for about 7-8 years.
Oh my goodness, you've had that script that long. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I wrote. I knew it would do really well.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to make it. I had kind of even scouted it, took my kids and kind of drove out to Nebraska. And in 2015, I made a film called God Bless a Child, kind of as all my kids were in it.
Mm-hmm.
We made it for it's like $12,000. And I was like, in many ways, it satisfied what I was wanting to do with Omaha in that way. So I kind of never planned to make it.
Okay. So
so when Cole really wanted to do it, I was like, yeah, this is going to,
like a freebie.
Yeah. I was like, this is going to do really well.
Yeah.
And I've believed it was going to do really well. And I really trusted Cole. He really understood
Mm-hmm.
the film. So for me, exciting. Cause I was like,
he produced it too, right?
Yeah.
He paid for it and everything.
Him and Preston were like, we'll self-finance it. Then we can make it the way we want to make it.
Yeah.
We can make it now. It wasn't like they were buying it to see, can we take the next 3 years and try and get this made? It was like, can we buy it from you? First they optioned it, sent it around to the agencies to see the agency response to it,
Mm-hmm.
to see if they wanted
to actors, if actors want to be
to
there.
actors, but also to the agencies.
Oh, okay.
Which is a smart thing to do because
no, it is. I'm surprised they'd look at it.
The overall review were ecstatic. Everyone loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So then they felt comfortable putting their money into it. And it was like, I think they bought it 6 months before they started shooting.
Okay.
So I knew it was going to get made. And for me, it was just a point of pride because I was like, I've been in meetings telling people this thing will do really well. And everyone being like, no, we think it's, this and that were their issues.
Yeah.
So when Cole ended up making it and went to Sundance, that was like everything I had thought it was going to do when I wrote the first draft of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's to have something come together. So were they even aware of the script?
Well, Cole was aware because he wanted to hire me. So he just read that, and he read The Integrity of Joseph Chambers, and was just trying to get an idea of the way that I wrote, and just kind of like latched onto it. I mean, I think his first kind of comment to me was like, "Did this really happen? Like this situation really occurred?" I was like, "Yeah." I actually interviewed some firefighters when I drove out there to talk to them about what their experience was during that period of time, and it's kind of a tricky thing to make a film that really is getting at this social issue that's still happening. I mean, in Virginia during Sundance, parents were taking their children to court and giving up their parental rights to the state because they couldn't take care of them.
Yeah.
So it was like some people at Sundance were kind of upset. They're like, "This isn't real." I'm like, "It's actually happened in 2008. It's happening now. This is the reason why we made the movie. It's like we're in this kind of state." So Cole really, really got the characters, and that was to hand it off to somebody. That's what you're hoping for.
No, that's true, and it was a good person to hand it off to.
Yeah, and he had a very strong vision. We did a couple revisions on it. I made the ending initially was a pretty solid gut punch, which prior to COVID would work. Post COVID, people really don't want gut punches.
They're kind of like, we want to be happy.
Yeah.
We were like locked in our rooms for 2 years.
Yeah, the world's already so dismal. Can we like see some optimism within the dismal element? They want like that. Where prior, when filmmaking, you could make a pretty hard-hitting movie. I mean, I remember watching Seven.
Oh gosh, in the 90s. Yeah.
When that film
the more depressing, the better.
Yeah, when that film ended, we all walked in. Nobody said a single thing. It was like this silent group of 50 people walking out of the theater. And I was like, yeah, you could hit hard in the 90s and the 2000s. After COVID, you can't do that.
Yeah. I think we're still processing COVID in a lot of ways.
100%.
Yeah, I think there's a movie in there somehow. But how do you do COVID about 2 years of duration?
Yeah, there's not a movie yet. There'll maybe be a movie in like, I don't know.
Like 10 years.
In 10 years. But
some more perspective.
It's really like too close. I mean, you see it. I just came back from Full Frame in North Carolina, and the flight, you can feel it. Yeah. It's like the proximity of people, and just because of the like, if you were traveling at all during COVID, you were like, "I'm getting COVID," and it was like the anxiety of that, and you can still feel that anxiety on the plane.
Yeah, well, I think shaking hands has decreased 50 to 75%.
Yeah.
Like there are still people who shake hands, but it's kind of a surprise to me when it happens, where it used to be just so natural. It just happened constantly.
What I kind of like is the fist bump and the elbow bump came out of that.
I love the fist bump.
And the fist bump I really like. Yeah. The elbow, for people that deal with a little bit more anxiety about germs, it's cool that they have that.
I guess elbow. I'm personally more of a high five guy. Like if we get a high five at greeting, every greeting a high five, can you imagine how nice? Every meeting would go better if we all high five before the meeting.
You can't really be met. Like a high five requires you to like lift your spirits right before you give the high five.
Everyone's has to get a little happier after the high five. And it's like a strong connection. Like,
100%.
Like, I mean, can you imagine a production meeting if you all high fived each other before the meeting?
Yeah.
It'd be fantastic. Well, gosh, maybe I'm going to do that. Next movie.
Yeah.
In fact, I even bought the web domain, I kid you not, called High Five Lifestyle.
Nice.
But so what is it like working with your kids? Your previous films, you worked with your kids when they were younger. I'm curious to know, do they recognize you as a director, or is this just like, why is dad telling me to do these things?
Yeah, working with your kids is really interesting. And I oftentimes get people being like, "Oh, I'm going to shoot a film with my kids." Yeah. I don't recommend it in the context of it requires you to like judge your kid as actors and visually judge your kids. And all of us think our kids are like unbelievably beautiful. Yeah. And you have to look at them and be like, you will or won't work on screen for this period of time. And that's like a hard thing as a parent to kind of like put on your children. So that's normally why I don't recommend it. But the first films I made, the first shorts I made, the first like film ever to go to film festivals was this film Ella and the Astronaut that I made with Rodrigo Hedebeck, and it was with Harper. She was 7 at the time. It was the first film I kind of made, and she was great in it. And visually, she's very beautiful but very filmable. Yeah. And then the follow-up was Charlie and the Rabbit with my son Elias, who was 3 at the time when we made that.
Mhm.
Same thing. I mean, I have mixed race kids, so they just have a really interesting. Now it's funny moving to Utah because everyone thinks they're just Polynesian because that's all they know. It's like brown skin, Polynesian. It's like no.
Well, and Polynesian is kind of a mix, like
yeah.
Filipino.
Yeah.
Like I met a guy and I was like, "Oh, are you Filipino?" He's like, "Well, no, I'm Korean. This, that, and that." I'm like, "Well, that's basically Filipino."
Yeah.
But anyway.
So we made God Bless the Child with all of them. They really kind of loved that process. My older kids kind of, not that they would probably still act if I wanted them to, but it wasn't like Harper went on to do photography. She's an amazing event photographer, shoots like shows up and down and goes on tour, shoots bands, and she really loves that. So acting like wasn't really her thing. And same with Elias. Elias he really into fish and like really studying like animals, and he really loves animals. So they started to move away from like acting being an interest to them. Not that they were when they were younger. They were just doing what I wanted to do, but they enjoyed the process, and they were little kids with not a lot of like, they played, Yeah. As they got older into the things that they started to pursuing, well, then for me to ask them to act for me was like, I'm taking away from what their passions are. Ari wants to be a filmmaker.
Okay.
So
that is amazing, by the way. Yeah.
So Ari, Ezra, and Jonah, it was funny because Jonah was 1 when we shot God Bless the Child. So at 5, he was like, I didn't get to be in that movie. I mean, I don't remember being in that movie. Can we make a movie now that I can be a part of and remember? And I was like, sure. So that motivated The Miners. And I knew Clayton and I were talking about making Killing of Two Lovers a little bit. And I wanted to make sure, like, if we're going to put money in actors, could these kids still act? So we went off and we shot The Miners because Ari, Ezra, and Jonah kind of asked me to do that. So I wrote that for them. It went on to Sundance and won the jury award, did really well.
Yeah.
And they were really excited by that. That opened up the door to like, it's not ridiculous for me to cast them in The Killing of Two Lovers.
Yeah,
and they were very, very amped. And one of the things that I learned on The Killing of Two Lovers that was really interesting to me, because for me, they were my kids. On Killing Two Lovers, they were rehearsing, they were dialoguing how things were gonna happen, and they were watching Clayton and Seppi and Chris performances. Like they were on set watching and seeing what they were doing, and then having dialogues, and as a result of that, and putting that into the performance. And I was like, "Oh, you're actors. Like you're actors now," because and I had to respect them that way, as opposed to like them just being my kids that are helping me make this kind of movie. So that was, for me, it's always really cool because when I made God Bless a Child, what was really important to me about casting them was the way in which they interacted and touched one another, because they're real siblings.
Yeah.
So they could climb over one another, they could push each other. Even there's a fight sequence in there where the 2 kids are boxing with these big Hulk gloves, and the way in which we're directing them while they're fighting, but the way that because I have to say to like Elias, who was just inherently bigger than Ari, I was like, okay, you got to let him get a couple punches in, because otherwise you're just beating the crap out of your brother, and that's not what the point of the scene is. So he would back down and let Ari get a couple hits in. And Ari, of course, he like really believes the world that he's in. So in his prospect, he's not a method actor, but it was like kind of that approach.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm fighting against my brother right now for real. So he would get a couple punches in, and he would try and go for kind of sucker punches, which would then upset Elias. So we had to have this dialogue that wouldn't have happened if it was 2 kids that weren't siblings and didn't know one another.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff like that me as a director was looking for. Like when you make a movie for $15,000, or, the question is like, how do I make a movie with the resources that I have and approach it differently than someone with $5 million could just do really easily?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you make a film with kids that know each other and will interact with one another in a way that no kid movie would ever be able to capture.
And also there's all those labor laws and stuff.
Yeah.
Which as a parent, you can totally circumvent.
You can circumvent them.
I can sign any release anytime.
You can circumvent them, but I do want to say they are in place for a reason.
Yeah.
And with my kids, with God Bless the Child specifically,
yeah,
kids can only work for about 4 hours, and then they start to unravel.
Oh, yeah.
Because 4 hours to a kid is like is a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
So the benefit.
So you just follow them because it just makes sense.
Yeah, the benefit for me was we shot for 3 months. Thankfully, it was like, you know, we're shooting in my house and in Davis, California, which is the town I was living in. So to stop production wasn't like I had bought it was the
you weren't burning money. You didn't have like 100 crew waiting.
Yeah, we weren't burning. It was me and Rodrigo, and we weren't losing any money.
Yeah.
By taking time, and we were kind of respecting the amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I really learned was the biggest kind of learning lesson for that was if they blew the day, it had to, and my frustration had to end the day that I wrapped.
Okay,
Or
so
the
you had
hour
to
I
make it
wrapped.
separated.
So the second I walked in, I couldn't be mad at them, and because it wasn't fair to just be like, "Man, you just blew that day. I'm pissed at you now."
Yeah.
It was like that wasn't okay, and they made that like really known day 2 or 3. Because I was like frustrated. Like, what are you mad? We're done shooting. Like, you can't be mad at me anymore. You told me we were gonna go, you know, get hamburgers if we did the day. We did the day.
Yeah. Well, honestly, in a way, you kind of avoided a lot of problems. I don't know if this is intentional. You avoided a lot of problems by using them as a unit.
Yeah.
Rather than be like, Jeremy, you're the star.
Yeah. And
You know?
it ended up, you know, for me, one of the great things is they have fond memories of the shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and they have fond memories of the film. They watch it, you know, probably once a year. They watch it together, and they all have pulled their own one-liners from it. So they have like, as a unit, they have this like inner
shared experience
that has this style. Like if one of them's giving the other one crap, there's a line when they're washing the dog, and Ari's trying to get the soap off the dog's leg, and keeps missing. And Eli's like, "Let me do it." And he's like, "No, I'm not the perfect aimer." And so if the kids are fighting over something, one of them will be like, "I'm not the perfect aimer." And it's like,
It's like they have their own catchphrases.
Yeah.
This is great.
And that makes me feel good because you want to protect your kids. You have to be really careful. I mean, some of these YouTube kids are really speaking out against their parents now, being like, "Not cool."
Now they're getting old enough, they have a conscience of their own, and
as my kids are older, their experiences are really great. My younger two, Ezra and Jonah, are really wanting to do something. They've been bugging me for the last year to be like,
do they want to agent and stuff?
No,
they want to make movies.
They just want to make another film.
Okay,
they're like,
they want to be in one of your movies.
Yeah, they're really into sports now, and they're really bugging me to do like a basketball themed film that they can be in.
It's like you can do Hoop Dreams.
Yeah,
but like a fictionalization Hoop Dreams.
Yeah.
But with like 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, that sounds like a really great experience. I mean, it's funny. That's so problematic. Have you seen the movie? What is it? Not Iron Claw. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The family.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, when I saw that, I just thought of the Osmonds.
Yeah.
Like the whole time. Like that weird, like your dad's your producer and he's picking winners and losers, but you're a family.
It's 100% not okay. I mean, and you see it in those contexts. I was kind of aware of that and not wanting. You have to consciously not be that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the benefit is, again, I'm making a smaller movie. Both films were small budgeted movies. I don't know what's different when you're like, you know, you look at Michael Jackson as a child and his dad, and you're like, but they were making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it was changing their life. And you can imagine, I don't think it's okay, but you can imagine a father justifying, like, they'll never have to worry about finances when they're older. And if the dad grew up poor, it's like he's going to have the PTSD of being poor.
Yeah, seriously.
Force that on his kids so that they don't have to. But when you look at Michael Jackson as an example, you're like, dude, that guy never got to grow up. It's like you look at him in his late 40s and you see interviews and you're like 12, dude. You're like,
well, like that's kind of a thing with famous people. Like they get locked in the age when they got famous, but he got famous so young, he was like 12.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that with actors?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're 50, but you feel like you're like talking to an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And I don't know really how to react because I feel like, I don't know. It's weird because I'm used to treating 50-year-olds a certain way, but he's kind of begging to be treated like an 18-year-old.
Yeah. There's a weird dynamic that you don't really understand it as a filmmaker until you're like in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you are watching the people around them. Entourages, anyways. A bigger actor normally has 3 to 5 people that are around him.
Yeah.
That are getting paid. So their job is to keep their job, which is to continue to disillusion the person that they work for.
Yeah, if they challenge them, they'll be replaced probably.
And if you watch really good actors, like I listened to this interview with Bill Hader that I thought was like so smart of him, which is his high school best friend is still on set with him. And he talked about making Barry, and the specific scene where he had to like he was in a bathroom, he just breaks the entire bathroom. And Hader was saying he thought he did such a good job. The first take, he just breaks everything, thought he did such a good, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that was like so amazing. And he asked his best friend, he's like, how's that? And he's like, well, you were acting.
You're an actor, baby. That was such good acting.
He's like, you asshole. And then they had to reset it. But I was like, smart that you put somebody that can be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because you need that. Because when people's careers are there's only so much that they can say to you.
No, it's true. It's funny. I mean, I'm trying to think. I have known some people before they got really famous. And it's interesting on the other end how it kind of like it can happen two ways. One, it changes the way they relate to you. Like, oh, you're part of my garbage past. I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
The other way is they're hungry to talk to you to see if you will still treat them the way you used to treat them, people.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of looking for like a normalcy. And I guess I've seen that also with people I've known who have gotten extremely rich. It's a seemingly like that's probably more common here in Utah. Like friends of mine who have done major startups and they sold them for hundreds of millions of dollars. And then there's kind of like they can be in either one camp.
Yeah.
Same situation.
Well, what's really tricky
Yeah.
in the arts, and I think that the startups is a great example as well, but filmmaking is another area where there comes a point where this close network, like your parents and like your friends are going to sit you down and be like, let's be reasonable. Like maybe what you're doing is crazy and you have to step out into the dark to be successful. There's a period where every artist that's going to reach some element of success is swimming against the stream.
Yeah.
And the stream is the people that you love. And you do that and then you get there. And you get that success and you're where you wanted to be. And that was required, that kind of stepping in the dark. As a result, you get this entourage of people that job was to motivate you, encourage you. And it's like now you're around those people. You're not having to step into the dark anymore, but you have to a little bit still live in that world where you're kicking against something. Otherwise you end up with a, safe career and then the things aren't interesting that you're making anymore. So I think a lot of times as people are going back to because they knew the loved ones' recommendations were concern.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to dissuade you. They were concerned. So you're going back, you're like, do I still have those people that can tell me that I'm stepping into the dark? Because I kind of want to know that I am.
Yeah.
And it's like, if they are yes men as well, you're in like real trouble.
No, it's true. In fact, I read Donny Osmond's autobiography, and in it, he talks about like when he was 12, he realized that even like people in his family, not his immediate family, but his cousins would talk really loud at him. And they even had a hard time like just hanging with him.
Yeah.
And it was like weird for him that he got that famous, But
I don't know how at that age you really manage it. I mean, some of the stuff I've read, people, it was like the actress in Napoleon Dynamite, like her mom pulled her out of acting so she could be in high school.
Who, Deb?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was able to be like the 4 years in high school and then come back, and that allowed her to be grounded. It's kind of interesting. You really, any actor or famous person that really wants to be grounded, you just move to a small town in the Midwest because no one cares.
No. Honestly, I think that's why Robert Redford lived here.
Yeah.
No, really, because like
they don't care.
Half of people in Utah be like, Robert, I don't care.
Yeah. It's really smart because you can really be in an environment where like people like know that you are important somewhere, but you're not important there.
Yeah, you're not.
And it's a real good way to kind of get grounded. And I've seen a few people that have done that, and it's really helped them get to zero.
Oh yeah, well, and honestly, Robert Redford is a good example to me. I mean, we're going to talk about your Sundance experience, but when I worked there in the Institute, not in a major capacity in anywhere like Robert here, but it was interesting to me because like the first thing you're told when you work there is that you call Robert Redford Bob, And it seems like Robert Redford made a distinction between Robert Redford is his brand that he sells and Bob is who he is.
That's interesting.
And he was able to do that. And even I remember one point, there was one of the staff of the Sundance Institute was introducing one of his films that wasn't very successful. I think it was the one about Abraham Lincoln. And he was like, she was like giving this, it's just the most amazing film. It's just ingenious, this long thing. And Bob in the back, Robert Redford, said, stop. Like he shut down the praise, you know? And she's like, okay. And then that's, but again, because that would be the natural tendency of everybody in that room worked for him.
Yeah.
You know, and more than that, you're like around celebrity is more than just a paycheck. It's like becomes, for some people in that world, it becomes a big part of their identity even. Like, which I think is a problem. I was actually roommates with Yoko Ono's personal assistant when I lived in New York. And I don't think it was good for her. But I learned a lot about Yoko Ono, that's for sure.
It's a weird business. I mean, filmmaking, you know, there's very few avenues from poverty to wealth in such a quick period of time.
You know, and also to be around such wealth and fame, and then you're just collecting a pretty much normal paycheck, maybe below normal, because they can get away with it because they're famous. Yeah,
I've talked about it a few times to young filmmakers. You know, you have to be really grounded. Because you'll be sitting in meetings or you'll be being considered for projects that, you know, budgets are $30 million. Your paycheck's going to be close to, you know, 700 million based off your agent negotiating. That's life-changing.
Yeah.
And you start to spend the money. You start to like think about how much that will change your social circumstance. And the next minute it could be a pass. So it's like, it's a very weird, like, it makes sense to me why a lot of people really struggle in the business is because, you know, if you started a startup, that may eventually happen, but it would normally happen with 3 years of like 14-hour days of like building that business up and then eventually going public and then somebody buys it or you get acquired by somebody for hundreds of millions of dollars. But there was 3 years of work put into it.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're putting that same type of work in the filmmaking, like you said, the budget's $2-3 million and your hope is Sundance. And it's like, that's what the goal is, not like, oh, maybe Amazon will come in and acquire us. And so it's like, it's a little bit of a different, because a film you're working, 3 years on average, but really it's 30 days on set if you're lucky. Most of the time it's 12 to 15.
And then 2 years in post.
Then
3 years.
2 years in post, which is really fragmented because it's not 2 years of straight, 40-hour day.
It's fitting it in between your regular job, right?
And then it's sitting on the film because maybe you finished the film in, September, and now you're going to wait to hear from Sundance in November. So you're just sitting around hoping your film is going to get in or hoping your film's going to do well. So it's not the same thing as like, and then you find out in November you're getting into Sundance, you got to wait till January. It's like, it's so fragmented. You can't consistently do work. So different than like a startup that you're kind of allowed to go in every day and put it your hours in.
Yeah, but you'd still be going nowhere. I mean, there's a lot of, you don't hear about them, but there's a lot of stars that go nowhere.
It's very funny. My brother's a web programmer, and me and my sister are very idea person, being a creative, you're an ideal person. And we had this like, prior to what Apple does now, we were like, hey, it's like digital business cards that you can just bump over to somebody, through the app. You both turn the app on, you bump it over. This was like 10 years ago. We were like, come on, Ian, let's do it. And he's like, you have a great idea. That's 300 hours of work for me for your great idea.
That's the difference between like somebody who lives in it, right?
Yeah, he's like, I'm pretty positive that halfway through me 150 hours in, you're gonna be like, you know what, we should also add. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, if you're serious about this, you better start learning how to program.
No, it's true. I mean, that's a funny thing is like, what is it? I mean, we experience this all the time in the arts and the filmmaking. It's like they have no idea how much work goes into the end product.
Yeah.
And you just like, you look like, oh, my Instagram app opens. It's like, it took hundreds of people years to get it to work at that point.
Yeah,
you know?
I often tell filmmakers when they ask me kind of how I've been able to make these films over the years, I said it's really actually critical that you understand all of the departments. So when we did Charlie and the Rabbit, for example, my sister bought me the camera that we shot on. I didn't have enough money for any sound equipment except for an H6. So I didn't have a boom. So we did it all MOS, knowing we were going to have to Foley the entire movie after that. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was living in Davis. There was times I had to go out into the fields at 3 a.m. because it was the only area that we didn't have the electrical wires running. So you didn't get that high. And I had to do all the Foley on that. So, and then Rodrigo and I did the post sound and the sound design and so forth. And it was like, so then later when I was asking, for example, our sound designer to help us on this project, one, I knew how long it was going to take.
Yeah.
And then second, I had a long dialogue with him about what could I do to prep the project to be ready for him. So we did all the track work, putting, the main actor on track 1, secondary actors on 2, Foley on track 7, music on track 18, and just organized and cleaned a lot of it up so that the reality was he could put 3 days in it,
Yeah.
And it's like, that stuff is like actually really, really critical to understand. Otherwise you're asking, you're like, hey, I got $5,000. What can you do? And they're like, nothing.
Nothing.
Because what you end up doing is you give them this sloppy, sound, and they have to go through and clean that all up. And that $5,000 would probably eat that up. Whereas if you organize it all, so it starts to be really critical on a kind of a lower indie level to understand all those positions. So when you ask people for favors, you know what you're asking.
Know what you're asking, and also even if you're paying them so you don't get ripped off.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear, film. In fact, my brother's remodeling his house, and it's like, I just swear, it's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm like, no, that's not right. That doesn't take that long to do fill in the blank. But like, they just capitalize on like electrician knows how long it takes, but you don't. And they know how much it costs and you don't. And they kind of just fudge it, cheaper materials. I mean, you got to really be on top of it in construction. Same thing applies to filmmaking, but more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I early on in my career, because, Charlie and the Rabbit had gone to Sundance. Guy wanted me to work on his short. He was like, I'll pay you to come out and direct the short. It was in New Jersey. I was like, oh, no, never paid me to do anything.
Yeah.
And I walked onto that set and it was like nobody cared and everyone was requiring top rates.
Overcharged.
They paid it was like the budget was like $40,000. All the actors were working for free. I was like, he paid me like $800. He paid the cinematographer $800. I was like, man, you did not know what you're doing. And the worst part about it is because no one cared. They didn't care about the quality of the work they were doing.
No, it's true.
So it's mediocre work, top pay. And I was like, we could have made this movie for like, I don't know, $3,000 had you talked to me prior and said like,
no, yeah, no. In fact, this is something I just realized a little, and this applies to startup land too, but it applies to film. I feel like there's 3 ways to get ahead in film. And it's like, you can work harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
You can be a huckster, or you can have good ideas. Best type combo is to have good ideas and work hard.
Yeah.
That's where you get like Steven Spielberg, right? But work hard and be a huckster, that happens.
Yeah.
That really happens. And just be a huckster happens. And if you keep moving and you keep finding kind of new marks and stuff, there's a lot of people who make a fairly good living in film doing that.
Yeah.
Sad. It makes me embarrassed whenever I kind of run into it.
Well,
come on.
It's partly why the industry is struggling.
Yeah.
You have a lot of this. I always end up meeting producers at the end of that. They're like, they come to me because I've made films for such little money and they want to figure out how to make a good movie for little money. And I always learn it's because they blew $2 to $3 million on somebody that's just scammed the crap out of them.
Exactly. And it's like, and you look at the movie, you're like, oh, that movie could have been $200,000. I don't know how you spent that much money on that.
Yeah. What I always say to people is like, please just send me the scripts. I'll happily read them for you and tell you, because I want people to stop doing that to these investors, and I'm like, I'll read it and tell you, like, don't make that movie. It's like, talking about Sundance per se, you know, as a filmmaker, you have to have your creative vision and also be well aware of the market, what's going on in the market. And like lots of times filmmakers will make the movie they always wanted to make. That's like, hey, I got this idea. I want to make it. And they're very adamant about the film they want to make. And it can play at Sundance for sure. Because their objective is not selling movies. Their objective is celebrating creative, inventive ideas.
Yeah.
So they could have a really creative, inventive idea that no one's interested in watching outside of the filmmaking community at Sundance.
Yeah. That's a problem that happens at Sundance. It kind of gets really folded in on itself, and it's like we spent $10 million on Micronesian ant farmer who discovered a new kind of honey. It's like, okay.
Yep.
And it'll play at Sundance, and everyone will be like, this is the best movie. This is amazing. But end of the day, an ant farmer discovered a new kind of honey to feed ants. You got to tap into something else too, if you're going to sell that. If you're going to want more people to watch it.
Sundance is very much celebrating creative cinema. That's the objective. I mean, a couple of times early on when Redford was still there and he would speak at the director's brunch, it was very clear that he was trying to figure out his objective was always to figure out how to support and help the indie market. So if you look at...
And he even saw himself as a bridge.
If you look at the 90s and you look at the early 2000s, I would say that's a different Sundance. That is a Sundance.
It is, 100%. Very different than it is now.
Yeah, that's a Sundance that's trying to figure out how to help filmmakers eventually have careers in the business and to help these films be marketable so that the indie market can be kind of thriving. So that, and then you'll get them like a Kevin Smith or, making Clerks.
Yeah.
And like seeing a movie like that or a Slacker or, and you'll get these it's why you get a P.T. Anderson. It's why you get, a Kelly Reichardt, and it's like, then there was a shift to like really put creative voices, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it is a big shift away from like, we're actually not concerned whether these films sell at all. We're not that interested in even engaging the Hollywood market in the same way that they used to. And then you get really great movies, but they're not going to have a wide audience.
Yeah.
They're just not going to. And so then you really have to go to Sundance. I mean, living here in Utah, it's like a lot of times I'm going to Sundance because most likely I'm not going to get to see those movies
ever again. And some of the best movies I've ever seen, and they never got distributed.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, you see that with European cinema as well. It's like you've got the LA Film Festival. When Doug Jones programmed that festival with Maggie McKay, you could walk into anything. You didn't need to read the program. You just walk in.
Oh, really?
You watch it like a movie that would blow your mind. You would have to struggle to ever get to see that movie ever again. Because a lot of them were these European films that had gotten European, money. The filmmaker made their vision. The movie was really brilliant, but it's not a large audience movie. It's not even really a small audience. It's like the filmmaking community or the independent cinema market is really, really small.
Really small.
Like if you took everyone who loved independent cinema all around the United States, you're probably dealing with movies that would make $5 to $10 million in the box office.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of thousands, I think is actually,
you have to like,
and that's if everybody was able to market it and know about it and blah, 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 the whole chain worked.
You have to hit that market of like Green Day. If I use Green Day as examples, like
the band.
Yeah. The band, like, right. In the 90s, they were this like Bay Area band, but they were writing music that like could connect with, which did. I was there. I watched the transition from indie, small punk, like a bunch of punk rockers in there to jocks being in there to like, and all of a sudden, and it's like, that's like the movies you have to make.
Well, like I think people like Christopher Nolan, I think he gets that,
100%.
But to me, I think he's really into it. I think he's a frustrated philosopher physicist. Yeah. And he maybe even kind of wishes he had gone into one of those two fields. Almost to that point, you watch his movies. He's so obsessed with philosophy and physics. Yeah. But he throws in action sequences too. And and that's good for him.
Yep.
Like his movies make $1 billion because of it. And he reaches a wider audience.
Christopher Nolan, Alejandro Araujo, and Curzon all know this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you watch their films, you see the independent movie that they wanted to make, and you can almost see the commercial elements they need to add to it, so it has a bigger audience.
Yeah.
If you look at Gravity, you're like, I bet if he wanted to make that movie the way he wanted, it would have just been Sandra Bullock and almost no dialogue. And it's like, you got to bring the George Clooney aspect in, and then you get $500 million.
Yeah, exactly.
You can like watch it, and on one end, it's like, you're like, man, I wish you were just making the movies you want to make. And then Roma gets made, and you're like, oh, that's the movie you wanted to make. I get that, because you're dealing with Netflix, and you don't who
need
cares?
That. Yeah.
And you get, Bardo as well. And you're like, oh, now I'm seeing the movie that you're like, I don't care if there's an audience or not. I'm going to make my movie. The other aspect, you have to respect it. I mean, Christopher Nolan is like establishing, he's vocally, I haven't read any articles where he's publicly said this. I think he's just saying it with his actions. Budget should be $75 million for blockbusters, because they will recoup their money and significantly more. Let's all just stay there.
Yeah.
And blockbusters should be there. My belief outside of that is movies should be between $10 and $20 million after that. And those are the windows of expectation. And then real indies should be $5 million.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, some of these budgets on like these movies, when they say, I don't know if they're amping up the numbers for shock values. Like, come see this movie. It was $500 million. I don't see how that movie is $500 million. I mean,
it's a lot of people getting paychecks who are not aware. Maybe they are aware, because I don't know them personally. From an outsider, it feels like they are ignoring how much they're hurting like the industry.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And that's what's really frustrating me. I'm like, we're all artists here.
Yeah.
Like, yes, there's commerce as well, and we should acknowledge the aspects of commerce, but we're artists that when, like I walked down to Mickey 17 frustrated. I was like, director's cut is going to be taken away from so many directors as a result of that movie, because he did a test and it tested better with the studio cut. And he was like, yeah, the same thing happened with Parasite. The studio cut tested better, but I wanted my cut, got my cut, and I won Oscars, and it made $100 million. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, the result is you just impacted so many filmmakers. I felt the same way with Northman, when Edgers made Northman. And I was like, dude, I like you, but you just like probably 15 projects died that weekend.
Oh yeah. Like original scripts,
original ideas, creative control from the director, studios being like, oh, I mean, you saw it with Warner Brothers. It's like Mickey 17 bombed. What was the other one that bombed? And then it was like, head of Warner Brothers, like, we're going back to IP. It was like 2 bombs and we're going to IP.
That's what it takes, is 2. No, really. I heard Judd Apatow say that. If you have like 1 flop, you're okay. If you have 2 in a row, you're finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see that there's the lack of risk taking. And I do think there's discipline. In fact, we had a director on previously who did really small budget movies. And the thing is I think there's a temptation as a director is like, okay, I made a movie for $50,000. That's great. I'm going to make my next movie for like $2 million, and it's going to be way better than my $50,000 one. But no, you actually just exposed your risk tremendously more, and there's a good chance you're going to lose all your money.
Yeah. But I just due to how small the kind of industry is, after Eliza Hittman made Rarely, Sometimes, Never, Always, she's, I know her and know her husband. I called her.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, that's $4 million. What does $4 million do that $300,000 doesn't do? And she said straight, like, it pays your crew. She's like, it's a union shoot that pays your crew. Everyone gets paid.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more than that.
Yeah.
So if somebody really doesn't understand that, and they think $4 million is going to like blow up the world, if a $50,000 movie didn't pay anybody, you were like doing so many favors.
Yeah.
And you kind of have an obligation. If my own ethical opinion is, if you make a $50,000 movie that you ask favors from, you borrow from a rental house, it's like you have an obligation to then go back to everyone when you make the $4 million movie and pay them their rates.
Or when you're doing a commercial. Just speaking from experience, like if you got a Subaru commercial or something, just come on back. Come on back. Don't just don't hit up for the indie. Subaru's got money. It's all right. We can all live.
It's a process of lifting, and that's the obligation. It's like you have to kind of try and lift everyone. That's why I take it personal when someone. I mean, I'm glad Edger's turnaround made Nosferatu. It did really, really well, and that's gonna help majorly. I'm really glad that he did that. I'm really hoping that Ari Aster's next film is going to do really well because Beau's Afraid didn't do very well. If those guys that are ahead of us can kind of like do that, it really lifts a lot of people underneath them. And that's the industry works that way. It's like you've got Killers of the Flower Moon blowing $200 million. You have Ridley Scott blowing $350 million. And it's like whatever. I think Napoleon was $300 million. And it's like, that's hurtful.
Jeez.
That's a massive step back. And it's like the industry is constantly shifting, I would say the market has less. My own belief is that the market has less effect on the impact to filmmakers and Hollywood as the filmmakers themselves. When they make good, when Oppenheimer makes $1 billion on a $75 million budget, that reverberates through the industry and helps
everybody.
Lots of filmmakers that are trying to get films made, and it's like, but when they blow the money, that the negative impact goes through. The market itself is like, that's always fluctuating. You could still I was just reading about Novocaine. They made that movie for, I think it was $15-18 million. And they were, I think Warner Brothers made or Paramount. They weren't worried because they're going to make $30 million off that movie over time. That's net zero as an impact.
Yeah.
Like those type of movies Iron Claw made $43 million on a $10 million budget. That's a positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
The filmmakers need to start being aware that, in my opinion, they need to start being aware that it's not the market, it's the filmmakers that are opening or closing doors to filmmakers below them.
No, it's true. I mean, they affect the whole field. And I think the danger is, I think, and you can see this just when you think of the human aspect, it's hard to be like, well, this is independent film level, but I think it translates to Hollywood. It's hard to be the guy who's saying like, no, and no. And yeah, I'll do that myself, and so on. And it's easy to be the guy writing checks who's like throwing a party and dispensing $2 million of investment money or $500 million of studio money, and you're like, I'm the man. Everyone loves me, and they're all kissing. I mean, it's not real. None of it's real. You have to recognize it's because you're their gravy train, and so it's easy to fall in that trap. Whereas filmmakers like Woody Allen, right? He always had kind of similar budgeted movies and made similar scripts. And to me, a thing I can't get over is episodes of these Star Wars series cost more than the original Star Wars movie.
I know.
And they're so much worse.
Yeah.
So much worse.
It's wild. They don't really, they're in the same boat. They don't have somebody that really.
They're just going through the motions and everyone's going for hire. And nobody, but it seems like people would want it to be successful. So much money's at stake. Even if it's a producer, it's like, I want this to be good. They can't just go, but we're so much just going through the motions.
It's void of risk.
Yeah.
Is what's happening. You have, Francis Ford Coppola, you have George Lucas putting their own money on the table and being like, I'm hedging my bets that this matters.
Yeah.
What they have now is with these kind of things like Star Wars and so forth, worst case scenario, you get fired and then I just move to another studio. So it would be different if it was like, if this doesn't do well, you got to go find another job. You can't work in Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
There would be
the producers of Rocky mortgaged their house. If that Rocky had failed, they would have been potentially homeless.
Yeah. Would the Star Wars movies do better if they suck? You don't get to be in Hollywood anymore. They'd probably be better.
Yeah.
If we were functioning that way, as opposed to executives just move into different different studios and they just continue to move around, the risk is less. And that's what's void is. All these filmmakers really put their, heart and gut and money on the table. And that as a result of it, you got these amazing franchises. And now you have people with not that same commitment or dedication, or I would say even love for those franchises. Because those aren't my thing. But when you feel that I've watched movies that I don't think work, but when you feel the love of the filmmaker in it, it reverberates through the film. Even if the film doesn't work, you're just like, yeah, but you could tell. They took a big swing that is like a complete miss, but I felt the swing. You feel the wind off the bat. It's very cool. even when they don't work. Whereas you feel these safe movies that are like, man, there's no risk being taken, and as a result, you're hurting the franchise. That's a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Like, are you watching Studio? Are you watching?
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. The second episode where he totally screws up the shoot, I laughed so hard I cried.
100%. You can feel it. Seth Rogen, like, loves Hollywood, loves movie making. He loves being a filmmaker. You can it's in the DNA of that movie or that show. Every episode, I'm just like, there's a lot of love in here. It's not just like, hey, let's just make a TV show and see how well it does. It's like he did the research. Him and his Goldberg is his partner. The intricacies in there, the little like Easter eggs that are all over. You just feel the love in that, and I'm like, that's really exciting to like see, and I think that's why it's doing well. Is you just feel it, and I think that's important.
No, it's true. I think I wonder if like people. I mean, it's hard to be in film. It's really hard to be in film.
Yeah,
and it's like if you have connections and you've got money to last in the field for a while, it's easier. And so maybe it's just gotten so hard and so connected. And so, I mean, again, I don't want to I'm not going to gripe on this because it's kind of just normal, but maybe they're just, it's such, you have to be in this level that you just really never even had a risk in your life. Like, it's like you just, things were always kind of taken care of for you. And so you didn't really have to take that. Whereas like George Lucas nearly died in a car accident when he was teenagers. And that was hugely impactful on him, and more than that, he would race cars, which is a risk taking that,
Well, it's really interesting. Norm Macdonald had a show that was on Netflix. It was a talk show, and M. Night Shyamalan was on there, and Norm is Norm,
Yeah.
So I was watching that, and M. Night Shyamalan comes on, and Norm basically is like, what the hell with your career? Like, you just made a slew of garbage movies. What's up?
Yeah.
And one of the things I thought was really interesting is that M. Night really talks about, like, he started to lean heavily on craft over risk the more experienced he got. So less risk taking, more craft based stuff, which is why those movies don't really work. And then he started to talk about The Visit, which he mortgaged his house, financed himself, and was like, I'm going to put myself in a risk place again. The Visit's like a funny movie. It works really well for what he made. And I was like, oh yeah, bravo. And then you go back to like, he went back into the craft thing. It's like, where's the risk with the last two movies? And it's like, he needs that risk to kind of oscillate. And you can kind of see that. Other filmmakers, it's like Nolan just like is constant. I think he understands where he thrives as a result of putting himself in these positions. Like the stuff I read about Oppenheimer's, like it was supposed to be $50 million, something like that. He wanted to build the real sets. They were like, we don't have the budget to build the real sets. He's like, I'll do the movie for less if I can build the real sets. They were like, okay. And so he made it for less.
How did that work?
I don't know. He didn't go into details on it, but I was like, he knows he needs the real sets. He needs the 3-dimensional space to be able to do the thing he does, as opposed to maybe just like build it on a,
especially I mean, this applies to like these Batman movies and stuff, but even because he plays with physics in this case, and like the atomic explosion is so unreal that he has to have a lot of realness around it. Like Batman's unreal, but he makes everything else real, hyper real to seem Batman seem more real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's an important part of his style, but maybe that comes from being independent.
Yeah. Aesthetically, you really have to, I mean, you see, like, I really like Darren Aronofsky a lot. He was a big influence in me early in my career. He always sucks when he goes big.
Yeah.
He's like a real character study individual. And when he lives in the character studies, that's when he makes really brilliant movies. And there is an element of that as a filmmaker to really kind of understand like the worlds that you can work in. And sometimes filmmakers just, I mean, I would never, slide anybody who decided to make a $300 million movie because I'm like, the paycheck's $10 million. I know why you did it.
If anybody's out there and wants me to make Batman 27, I'll do it.
But oftentimes you see if it's outside of like what they can handle, if they came up through the indie world and they're used to being really gritty on it, gritty and small. And that's like a big arena to be working in, which is a very different arena. Normally the movies are very mediocre. And it's a bummer because you're like, it didn't help your.
Yeah, well, I think it's like, I mean, especially when that much money's at stake. I mean, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but like to me, like how much filmmaking is just kind of being a boss and doing business stuff.
Yeah.
Like you should read all the business books. Like look up, like I do this. Like I'll walk into like a university. If I'm by Columbia, I'll walk into the university bookstore and I'll go to the business section. I'll see which books they're requiring and like buy a couple of them.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's as good as like learning it. And a lot of getting an MBA or something. But yeah, a lot of it's just admin and dealing with the big studio and crucial conversations and so on.
Yeah. A buddy of mine was a commercial photographer for, it was like 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Made about $1 million a year. And, some young photographers were asking him the process and he was like, it's 90% business, 10% creative.
Yeah.
And that's pretty in line. I mean,
well, you just won't survive without the business. And that's the miracle of Nolan is that he survives the business route and still has his art in it.
Yeah.
And he does it head on with the system. And partially he's built up a reputation where he can.
Yeah.
But like Woody Allen, his solution was keep my budget small, give tons all the back end to the studio in exchange for creative freedom, and then just keep doing it.
Yeah. It's
so, I mean, there's different ways to navigate it, but if you don't get it, you get lost.
Yeah. Well, what you're pointing to is actually understanding who you are as a filmmaker.
Exactly.
And
that's the big part. And how you can navigate it with yourself.
It was like kind of after Northman didn't do very well. Edger's, one of the articles I read, he's like, I'm just going to make $10 million movies. He was like, I'm going to go back to Lighthouse and kind of live in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he didn't, of course. It's like Northman was 50 million, but that's 50 million to 90 million. That's a big different arena that you're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
He did better with Nosferatu because he got the creative control he wanted to. And he's still dealing with like kind of 4 characters in this world, which is where he can navigate. And I was like, I walked out of Nosferatu enjoying the movie, but also being like, I think Edgers is finally understanding himself as a filmmaker. That's important.
Yeah. And I don't know. I hear people talk about this, but like, again, like studio executives, I guess it's like, it's very easy to be like, well, the studio ruined the movie. And that's like a good out. But it's like, I mean, just think of it as your own money. I mean, like you have to have respect for the money because like, that money could be a whole bunch of casts for broken arms in Africa or something. I don't know. But it's like this is people's lives.
Yeah.
In this money.
And it hasn't proven itself. I wish it had, but it hasn't really. I had read an article where Scorsese said, I've made the movies as close to what I wanted as I could working within the studio system.
Yeah.
So those are statements. And we look at his pedigree and you're like, these are great movies. Heart is like amazing. And then you're like, Netflix goes like, here's $125 million. Go make the movie you want to make with no regulations. And he makes Irishman, which is like not even comparison to all the other ones. I wish Irishman would have been like, and then you would approve the rule. And it's like, same. They gave Ridley Scott the same thing. Didn't happen. You give Zack Snyder, like all creative control, didn't happen. So what sucks is I wish those individuals would have proven it. They didn't.
Yeah.
It would have kicked the door open if they had. If they've been like, see, when the studio isn't involved, I make just bangers. And it's like what they did was the opposite. They have a slew of bangers that the studio actually made notes on. And so I think actually my own opinion is, and I haven't really worked with a big studio on a film, so I'm just speaking hypotheticals, but it's the wrestle back and forth that hopefully arrives at the best movie.
Yeah.
And I think when movies end up being kind of mediocre and people blame the studio, I always just assume the filmmaker got exhausted and let go. Like they gave up the fight.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's like, I mean, this is more from like books I've done. To me, I've had some successful book relationships and others that like when you start, you need to be 100% clear when you get on that boat that everybody is on board to make the thing that you're going to be making. Yeah. Like nobody's like thinking, we're going to do a gritty drama. We're going to do a fun comedy. And you don't want to depart on that boat with those two people. You want to be all on board. And you can, I mean, I do believe strongly in collaboration that 1 + 1 = 5. And, and that applies with producers and stuff. And this is, again, get on the boat with people you need. And this certainly applies to to independent film.
Yeah,
You know?
you very much have to establish like your own moral ethics early on, especially when you're making indie films. I mean, you're making indie films, you're like scrapping things together. You're making the best movie you possibly can with your resources, but you also have to like be in the beginning stages of establishing what your ethics are. Because if if Disney, this is happening less and less, but cut to 10 years ago, this is happening more, where they would take somebody from Sundance and then they would offer them a $70 million movie when they had just made a $2 million movie. To your point, you have to like, who are the people I need to be surrounded by? Like, who do I have to protect me? You definitely have to have a producer that's going to go to bat for you, and they're going to fight the studios for you. Because if you're working in the studio arena, it's there's lots of people with lots of different ideas. That's the part that gets exhausting. You start to like give in because you're like, this is a massive headache,
Yeah.
But
but the truth is, you're all on the same page. You all want a successful movie.
Yeah,
you all want to get to that destination, to a $1 billion artistically significant movie.
Because a modern day Woody Allen is Sean Baker, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Sean Baker's been offered bigger movies and said no. I mean, I met with a producer that offered him The Fighter, and he said no. And so he has decided to make the movies he's wanted to make within the world. And so he's not asking for $30-50 million. He's asking for $6.
Mm-hmm.
$6 will give you the creative freedom to be the writer, editor, director, cast mainly unknown actors, because you built your own, like you built the Sean Baker brand, like Woody Allen built the Woody Allen brand. That was important for him to understand early on, because after he made Tangerine, the studios were, they made that movie for $250,000. The studios were throwing him bigger movies. He could have taken the bigger movie route, but he learned early on in those early films that that's not what he wanted to do.
Well, I do. And maybe, like knowing, if you want to do, and if you can't do it, or like there's something going on. I mean, I think this is, again, keeping perspective on yourself.
Yeah.
And this has happened with movies. I've seen people get successful and they lose perspective on themselves and they begin to overthink what they can do. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
And there's like, no, that's not what you're good at.
Yeah. Well, because you're working in hypotheticals. You can imagine, like, if we look at David Lowery as an example, it's like going from Eighth and Body Saints. I think the budget was $5 million, if I remember right.
Yeah.
To Pete's Dragon. So if we just take him as like a test study, so how many people were on Eighth and Body Saints? Like 20, 30?
Mm-hmm.
To Pete's Dragon, you're going to be sitting with like at least 100 because you're working for Disney. You're going to,
and also you're successful.
Yeah.
I mean, so they view you differently.
Yeah. And so you have a studio execs. And I know Lowery fought, just reading a lot of the articles, he fought to kind of have the work environment that he had on Eighth and Body Saints exist in Pete's Dragon. So they did shoot a lot in natural light. Toby Hallbrook, he kept his producer with him, which is really smart. So you got the guy to fight. And it's like, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is what it's like to go from 30 people on set to 100, 120 people on set. You might learn in that process that you don't handle 120 people on set very well.
Yeah.
Or you might be sitting there directing the actor and you see the two PAs in your peripheral talking crap about you because they don't see they don't think the scene's working, and that starts to eat you alive. And it's like you didn't realize that because prior you didn't have the PAs on set, So there lots of times I think you're living in hypotheticals, what you can and can't handle. Then you get you go like, why not do a big film? You do it, you realize like the 120 people on set, I can't do that. And then you backpedal and you go back to kind of where you're comfortable. That you see that a lot in kind of Hollywood. Or you see like Wes Anderson, you see, I know I don't want a lot of people on set. I want a very small crew. And you get him being like, I'm going to control the whole environment. And so there's too many approaches because not one is correct, is in Hollywood. There's not one.
And it's what you can handle. And honestly, the studios, like they wish, again, it's like the studios aren't the enemy. The studios wish there were 1,000 Christopher Nolans. Yeah. Like if there was 1,000 guys who could, with $75 million, make $1 billion, we'd be all happy. And especially now that movie going has become, I feel like, I don't know, when I was a kid, we would just go to the movies and we didn't even know what we were going to watch.
Yeah.
Like we just kind of look at the movie posters and look at the times. We couldn't read reviews or anything and pick one and go and come out and say, good or bad, we had an experience.
Yeah.
But now it seems like people, it's like, if it's not something they plan 3 months in advance, they're not going to go. Or it's less likely. It's like they have so many other entertainment options.
I don't even think it's just the entertainment options. I think it's the price point.
Well, it's so expensive now too.
It was like $3.25 or something like that to go see a movie back in that day. Candy bars for 50 cents. So it's like, just to put it in context, it's like $3 wasn't that much. You could pull that together.
And your friends would have that money.
Yeah.
Whereas asking them to have $20 is a bigger deal.
Yeah. I mean, you could even like find enough aluminum cans to come up with $3 and, deposit them and get your money back. Now, $20, that's a steep cost. And so the result of that is less risk taking. Just in the last 6 months.
In the audience side of risk taking.
Yes.
Like I'm going to walk in, I don't know what I'm going to see. Yeah.
The last like 4 months, I've been like, I'm just going to go see movies that I'm like we're going to go see The Amateur on tomorrow. And I'm like, I know what that movie is, but I'm like, I like that actor a lot. It seems that like, how he's going to, slowly execute people. Will they be creative? The trailer had the big swimming pool cracks and the guy falls, 30 stories or whatever. I'm like, but I kind of want to just go see some okay movies too, and not keep only seeing movies that everyone's like, you definitely got to see it. Because like I saw Death of a Unicorn at South by. That's a movie people should. It doesn't fully work, but it should be seen because the filmmaker's taking swings.
Yeah.
And the actors in it are all great. They're all taking swings. Jenna Ortega's making an effort. Paul Rudd's probably the most staple in that. Everyone else is like trying stuff out. And I'm like, there's got to be a world where we get back to that, because it's really fun to watch these movies that aren't like, if everything you watch is it's like if you only watched the Super Bowl with sports, or, the NBA, the finals, it's like, well, then you don't have a real understanding of like what the sport is, because you're only watching that. That's how I feel with movies now. It's like people are only going to see either the bangers, or they're so stuck in the franchise they feel obligated to.
Like you have to keep up with what the latest X-Men because you've seen them all. Yeah.
But that's dying. People are, at least with my own kids, it's like,
no, it is big time. No.
The last couple Marvel movies, they had no interest in seeing.
Nobody even brought up Captain America in my entire.
What's really interesting with with Marvel, and I think this is the same with Star Wars, is it's like when you get out of the amusement park. It's like there's almost no desire to go back in.
You don't even think about it again.
And you don't think about it. So they've all chosen where they're going to step off.
Yeah.
I think for us as a family, it was the last Doctor Strange. And it's like we all walked out of that and went like, well, we don't need to see any more of those. And then because they do another one, you're like, well, now I'm out of the timeline. I don't want to go back and watch 7 movies to try and catch up. So you're just like, I'm off the train.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is something in filmmaking. And I go back and watch old movies and it's still kind of there. But I mean, but it's like when I used to go when I went to Sundance back in the paper guides before an app, and we wait in line, I'd read the description and then I'd stand in line, the wait list line, and then I'd go, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to see. I mean, the description had no correlation. I don't know if like somebody with dyslexia or something wrote the description, and you didn't know if you're going to see a lesbian 3-way or like 20 people get murdered with an ice pick or all 3. It was just great. Yeah. It was like so exciting. And now, even at Sundance, if I go into it, I know exactly what I'm going to see.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
I was living in LA, working at Jamba Juice, making zero money. So I couldn't really do anything when I was living there. But was bored and walked in on an afternoon knowing nothing about Fight Club. And I just like sat down with a group of other people in there. It was like 1:00 or something like that. And I walked out just like, what? Yeah. What did I just witness?
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, that was amazing. Yeah. It was a really cool era. And I had really hoped when M. Night Shyamalan kind of his career started, because Sixth Sense was like one of the best kept secrets. Everyone was like, go see it, but nobody was talking about it.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I remember that I was living in Sacramento and it was like one of the best kept secrets. People just said, go see it. I thought we were going to evolve into, that cinema was going to evolve into this experience where you just trusted the directors. Like you were seeing movies because the directors, and they were going to run like basically trailers that didn't tell you anything. I was like so excited. I was like, this is so great. You just trust the director. And then of course it didn't work.
Little do we know it kind of peaked out. But even on like the blockbuster side during that era, again, I don't want to be like, I feel like I'm sounding old manny.
Yeah.
But whatever, I am. So like even like Independence Day. Like I remember coming out of Independence Day. I guess I was like 16. I was like, oh my goodness, that was so amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like that. I guess it's like the studios discovered some formulas that seemed to consistently work. And Independence Day was the beginning of that and a lot of stuff. And they didn't realize that they had to have kind of like a farm team to kind of freshen the stock.
Yeah.
But so they keep hitting the same notes over and over again. And now they're not hitting the way they used to, but they keep if you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail, right?
There's a big difference though. One of the big differences I see is parents now, if we look at us anyways as examples, it's like your exposure to cinema and television was very limited in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there wasn't the streaming services. So my children, for example, have seen more films probably than I have.
That's true.
Even now in their age. Because they've
perfect access.
They've consumed a lot more content because of the access to that. It's like we had to go to the video store. Me growing up, the video store had one of the tapes. It was later that Blockbuster started getting like 5 to 6, but we didn't have a Blockbuster when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So there was one tape. So you had to like consistently go back to the video store to see if the person had returned it and someone else had not checked it out. So lots of things you were waiting on for a really long time. And then we had a movie theater that was there for a little bit and then went away. The only movie I ever remember watching in that movie theater was Terminator 2. That was it. So as a result, what you're dealing with...
What luck.
Yeah. Or you're dealing with a studio that established the formula you're talking about, but you're also dealing with the younger generation being so exposed to narrative arcs that they know the movie they're going into. That wasn't the experience when we were growing up. You could still get twisted. Could you make a fight? Like if Fight Club came out today, people would be like, that guy's not real. You know,
it would end the career of everybody involved in it.
Probably 15 minutes into the movie, they were like, I bet that guy's not real. Because have you know, like the Easter eggs that they go back, like, have you noticed that no one's actually really looking at?
And they would have found someone on Facebook would have said it. I mean, that's the way communication.
Yeah, somebody on Facebook would have said it for sure. So what I found, like the Severance is booming right now. And you're like, why is Severance booming right now? Because you're not sure what's going on. We're back to
that's one people have talked about.
We're back to a world where everyone's like, they're leaving me clues, but I don't know what Lumen is and what the motivation of Lumen is. And so they're giving us these Easter eggs as they go along. Or if you look at Nosferatu, you know what the end of that is. You're like, either the vampire and her end up together, they don't end together. That arc's already, but you're like, but what's Nicholas Holt's purpose in this movie? And so you're not really sure outside of he's going to sign this agreement. And you give like people asking questions as the movies are going on. The movies that the studios are kind of pumping out that are failing, they're not doing that. Yeah. Like you're going into the Marvel movie and it's like, the world's going to end. You're like, no, it's not. And you're going to spend the whole movie being like, oh no. And it's like, there's no, oh no.
Yeah.
Like you're going to, at some point you're going to be like, oh, this reactor will, it's a made up thing that will stop the world from ending. But these movies
on Independence Day, it felt real though. Yeah. Like you felt like you're on the edge of your seat. Like, oh my goodness, Will Smith better save the world.
Because there weren't 1,000, the world's going to end movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So now what we need in cinema is really movies that are like slowly rolling out. We don't exactly know. If I use Iron Claw as an example, it's like, well, if you read about them, then you knew everything that happened. But for those of us who didn't know about that family, walked in and being like, oh, well, I like Zac Efron and the trailer is actually pretty good. And then we're like, wait, oh, holy crap. All of the brothers died. It was like,
oh man. And more than that, like when the guy lost his foot, I did not see that coming.
It was
like ever.
The way he handles that.
Yeah.
It's like you're dealing with the POV of the road, and we're just following. You're like, he's probably gonna wreck his motorcycle. Who's the director? Sean?
But I would have I expected him to die, not lose his foot. How that impacted things how it went.
You thought the death was going to happen. You knew that part. So what does he do? He doesn't make it epic. You're just going down the highway, fade out, fade up. You're in a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You see him on the crutches, and you're like, yeah, of course. We knew he was going to get in some form of accident. Didn't know if he was going to die or not. You see him on the crutches, and you're like, oh, he actually gets out of bed. He wakes up and you see the bruises. And you're like, no surprise. Then you're in the kitchen. He's on the crutches. The island is blocking it. He comes to, I think, the refrigerator or something. You see the leg missing. You're like, oh my gosh, he lost a foot, and you're given the brilliance of cinema, which is question, answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on? Holy crap, he lost it. That's the brilliance of cinema.
Yeah.
The second the audience knows, that's where everyone's like, nah.
Yeah, I think, it's just, I guess, is the audience so jaded now? I mean, I wonder about that myself. Like, am I jaded?
It's not jaded. It's like somebody telling you the same story that they've already told you.
Yeah, because I go back and I went back and watched Wizard of Oz and some movies, that like I hadn't watched for a decade or so. And I was like, nah, this is good. I like this. I like Raging Bull. No, that's great.
Yeah. It really is this consistent, like we need to go back to that in cinema. And you can do it in all different types of genres, but it's a real, realize the audience is very educated. So tell a story in a way that hooks them,
mm-hmm.
Which is how every genre is dealing with hooks, but it's like, everyone wants romance comedies right now. And it's like, you look at romance comedy and you're like, what's the value of a romance comedy? It's never the story narrative. The story narrative is already mapped out, right?
Yeah,
they fall in love. There's a secret. What's the secret? And it's like, then one of them has to discover the secret. Do they still love them once they learn that secret or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's the arc of romance comedy. What's the value of it?
It was you all along.
Yeah.
You've got mail.
The real value is the chemistry. So
Yeah.
you've got to cast actors that have very serious chemistry and allow the audience to follow them, falling in love with one another. And then you have a great romance comedy.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the problems. Again, it's like, just as far as like the whole system and that like they lost the farm team. Like actors are debuting in $1 billion movies basically.
Yeah.
And they don't have it. They're not a Will Smith.
Yep.
I'm sorry. And then like they invest all this capital into make this guy the next Will Smith. But like, dude, Will Smith is amazing. Will Smith is, I'm sorry, pre-slap Will Smith. Like, when I was a kid, I watched him Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You just loved him. He made that whole show.
Yeah. I was talking yesterday with my buddy about Jack Black in High Fidelity.
Yeah. I rewatched that movie recently too.
When that guy rolls on the screen, you're like, that's somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, he just owned it, and you knew he was going somewhere.
Yeah.
And you look at his career, and you're like, that's no surprise. You could feel it. The person that's done that most recently is Harry Dickinson. When he came on screen, the first thing I thought him in was Triangle of Sadness, and I was like, yeah, that guy's going somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, thankfully he has it. Maybe eventually, maybe with the Beatles thing, that will be his kind of big thing. But it was like, when you kind of foster them over time, audiences get to root for him because you're watching them crush these movies, these like smaller movies.
Well, smaller movies. Well, more than that, like if you can have, it's easy to have carry the burden of walking into a cheap set in that represents a house in Bel Air and still be able to like take over the scene and hold people's interest for 10 minutes. Like, it's easy to do it if you have a big budget comic book hero thing on. I mean, maybe that even get lost in it, but it's a whatever it is. And I think this is frustrating to filmmakers but like, that's important. And it's indefinable. Like, again, we all wish there was a bazillion Jack Blacks, but there's kind of only one Jack Black. There's
also like an interest that this is happening just across the board everywhere. I was reading this article. It's talking about the executives at the major studios and like Ari Goldman. Is it Goldberg or Goldman? He was brought up, and it's like he took over the studio when he's 28. Now he's still there.
Yeah.
So you have like all the studio heads that like aren't leaving, but that held their positions when they were early 20s, early 30s. So they're not allowing a crop of like new ideas and risk takers to be filtered. we can see that in the
Or
same.
is there even an idea? I mean, because we don't have the smaller studios that feed into bigger studios.
But we're dealing with the same thing in the context of actors. It's like you're looking at, I hope F1 is good, but you're like Brad Pitt's 60 playing roles of like, I just started watching that John Hamm show, that TV show.
There are very few 60-year-old F1 racers in real life, just so you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the G-forces those guys do, you can do a 60.
Exactly. So then we're the John Hamm movie, show that I just started yesterday that Apple's putting out. He's supposed to be 45. He's not 45. So what we're dealing with is like it traditionally cut to 20 years ago. You're 60, you're now playing kind of like if you look at Paul Newman's career.
Yeah.
He played his age. Like he played a 60-year-old. Now we have these actors like not, it's like
because we've developed no undercrop since the birth of comic movie, undercrop of named actors.
Yeah, if you look at like the last Robert De Niro TV show on Netflix, and it was like, I can't remember what it was called, but he played this like president who stepped down because, you only did it for 4 years, stepped down. There's this weird chaos that's happening. You're like, you're too old to be a president anymore. It's like you needed somebody in there like Barack Obama's age should have been who this president was played by, an actor that age.
Yeah.
But De Niro's 84 years old. It's like, and what's weird is like Robert De Niro's playing grandparents when he should be playing great grandparents, and Kevin Bacon should be a grandparent, but Kevin Bacon's playing a guy who the role would be normally given to a 45-year-old. So it's offsetting, like they're not helping build a crop of like younger actors that would take over those kind of roles.
And it does hurt the story. Like, honestly, I feel like that age problem was one of the biggest problems with Flower Moon. I mean, they had Leonardo DiCaprio playing such a heartthrob that a young Indian girl was just enthralled to be in next to him. Like, he's freaking 50.
Yeah, he's 50.
Like that wouldn't, like a woman in the prime of her life is not going to be enthralled by a 50-year-old driver.
Yeah.
But I was just like, am I watching? Is this what they're expecting us to believe? And then Robert De Niro is way too old. Leonardo DiCaprio should have played Robert De Niro's role, and then Chalamet or whatever, Timothy. Yeah, he should have been that role.
100%. Yeah, we're dealing with this weird. The actors aren't evolving past they're not leaning into age appropriate roles. And I understand why. I mean, they love what they're doing, so I get why you're not. You're like, hey, I'm in a position of power. I'm going to keep holding on to that power. But they're just not allowing like a natural crop. So there's going to be a disconnect between a 20-year-old watching a movie that Brad Pitt's in. It's like they don't have that connection.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think. I just feel it's like because we just lost the ecosystem. Like there's no What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I mean, there's no. Yeah. And I do. I don't know if like. That's the audience's fault something. It's not. I mean, well, no, it's not. No.
Audiences. I just read in it.
It's easy to blame the audience, but it's never the audience's fault. It's like we just need to take risk on people. And What's Eating Gilbert Grape is a movie about nothing, and you can't. I mean, but it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah,
and there's no way to get made in a million years today.
Yeah, audiences just ebb and flow consistent. I mean, if you're a business, Hollywood's a business, which it is. Your audience, your responsibility is to understand the audience.
Yeah.
And like what they've done a little bit, which has been discussed a lot, which is like they were pandering to the audience. They were giving the audience the control, and the audience is actually not looking necessarily to be pandered to. They're interested in challenges as well.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the pandering that actually ultimately hurt them. Mm-hmm. And it's like they're looking. I mean, I just that whatever that email I get called from the dailies. They did a poll. They polled the audiences, and because they were wondering if people liked movies, and this was the article, and it was a lot of people, thousands of people they interviewed. Resounding, they're like, we want to go to the cinema. You're just not making what we're interested in seeing. And it was 76% of the people they polled wanted romance comedies and comedies.
Yeah.
It was 46% wanted thrillers, 26% wanted action. They make a lot of action, but people aren't really. If 26 are looking for action, 76 are looking for romance comedies. You're off, and regular comedies. I'm like, you're way off. So it's not the audience. It's definitely you. I'm like really curious to see Friendship come out because I saw that at South by, and it's hilarious. and I'm like, this is a solid comedy. I'm hoping it just crushes. I hope it makes $50 million in the opening weekend kind of stuff. They're not really, the PR campaign's been really low. I think I hope they hear this poll and push it, because they've considered comedies not to be successful. It's a movie that you would go back to the theater and watch 2 to 3 times, because the one-liners are so good that you want to come out like being able to like know all the one-liners. They're too funny.
Well, I feel that and that's in a way where maybe we're at a phase in friendship, or some movie's going to be like the Pulp Fiction, like the movie that just kind of like commercially successful, comes from nowhere, and then we'll be like, oh, well, I mean, open the floodgate.
One of the reasons Minecraft is doing so well is because it's a comedy. I mean, my son went and saw it and was like, it's pretty ridiculous. He was like, it's almost too ridiculous. But the audience is responding to it. I mean, it's chaos, but it's very like Rocky Horror Picture Show response to that.
Yeah, my assistant liked it, and she said she would go watch it again with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was surprised from the reviews I read of it and stuff. I did not know that was going to occur.
No, they didn't either. But that's a comedy. I mean, it's baked in IP. Yeah. Which is like,
I mean, it's kind of like the Barbie. A lot of people grew up with Minecraft. Like 20 years of people growing up with Minecraft. It's kind of like Barbie. You grew up with Barbie, so you're going to go see Barbie. So I think that's it.
I was very surprised asking people, because they didn't honor the world of Minecraft in the context of like how they animate the characters, which is what I thought they were going to do. Yeah. So I thought they were going to be in trouble like with Sonic. But a lot of the people I talked to were planning to go see it. And I do lean kind of into that study. I think people really wanted a movie that they could laugh with. Yeah. And it sounded like from my son who watched it that he was like, Jack Black knew he was making a ridiculous movie. Momoa knew they were making a ridiculous movie. So everyone's aware that it's not trying to be a masterpiece. It's like just trying to have a really good time. So it'll be interesting to see how that reverberates. Will we start getting to see... Because, they were just giving Judd Apatow was like the comedy. Judd Apatow and Will Ferrell were the comedy people. And to your point, they weren't like fostering new young talent that were comedians as well. They were kind of like, they just allowed like these great actors. They're all great actors, but they were like, these are our people and we're going to age with them. And it's like, well, you gotta have younger people that are funny too. So that 20-year-olds are seeing people that they're going to be kind of able to watch get older. I remember my dad watching a film with Cary Grant and being like, oh man, he was so great in his time. And I was like, oh, you aged with these actors. And he was like, yeah, it's like, he's like, it's a really weird thing to watch this person that you like saw them in their, 20s and 30s. And now they're in their 50s or, 60s with you, 70s with you. And you're kind of like, you're thinking about that. So it's like there's not a lot of 40-year-olds in the acting world. Like, it's
or 30 or 20. Yeah. I mean, Timothée Chalamet, there should be like...
You got Timmy, you have Ryan Gosling.
Should be like 20 of him, but there's not.
It's like
in the 90s there were, Yeah.
Dune is like giving you it's like the crop of like... Denny's kind of like, here's all the A-listers that exist within these age
that are
ranges.
Under the age of 40. Because honestly, even Timothée Chalamet, he's not even that young.
He's 27, I believe.
Like when Leonardo DiCaprio was in Titanic, he was early 20s, right? Yeah. So we could have like a mega star and put him in a mega blockbuster in his early 20s, and there's no equivalent to that happening.
Yeah. I hope they foster more, because what you're dealing with is a lot of actually really great actors that you end up, because the studio's not really working to foster these individuals, you end up with like, you get Omaha's a great example. You get a John Magaro in your film who's unbelievable as an actor, but they were never interested in fostering multiple individuals in his age group. So therefore they're like, well, then he's not really bankable. Therefore you're going to struggle with distribution. And I'm like, well, we need more of these actors that you're working with, that you're putting in stuff, so that when they're not working on a bigger movie, they can maybe help an indie up and coming director. And then
it just helps the ecosystem.
You really need it. I was thinking, guys, you got to foster the ecosystem.
I mean, there's an expression in how to win friends and influence people. It's called killing the goose to get the golden egg. Yeah. And I kind of think that's what they've been doing for the past, I don't know, 20 years, certainly 15 years, but maybe 20.
And we're seeing the reverberation. It's not sustainable. And we've got to figure out how they want it to. They keep talking about the industry dying, and I'm like, it's too much money. It's not going to die.
But
if you're going to kill it, get out and go do something else, and let everyone else take over.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, I don't think you can take for granted that America will lead the industry. Like, my assistant is more into Korean stuff than American stuff.
Yeah,
and she's a normal American girl in her 20s, and it's amazing how much she knows about Korean film and television.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting if you've been reading the articles lately. As Netflix moves through Europe, there's a 5% tax on Netflix. So however many streamers they have, they've got to give 5% of what that profit is to the film industry within those countries.
Really? That's interesting.
And it ends up streaming on Netflix. That's the one guarantee. But after a certain number of years, those producers own the rights outright.
Of the stuff?
Of the stuff.
And that's done by the European Union laws. That's not like a union thing or anything.
That's the countries being like, we're going to let you bring Netflix in. You're going to get 15 or 5% to the industry.
That is amazing.
You know what we're going to get? Lots of amazing, crazy films that, to your point, people are going to be interested in.
Yeah.
Because it's like because we're not bound by America. Americans will watch anything that's good.
Yeah.
The other aspect that's coming through that will be an interesting impact is like the AI element that they're experimenting with, which is like you could get a Korean film that like what you really struggle with is a Korean film written for Koreans. So there's lots of dialogue. It's fast and heavy.
Yeah.
So you're just reading subtitles and you're not able to like pay attention to the beauty of the film that the filmmaker took. But with the AI, they're able to like use their voice recognition, switch it over to be English to honor their voice in English. And then the AI is remapping their faces so it looks like they're speaking in English. And if that takes hold, then you'll be able to watch those like heavy Korean films that like have heavy dialogue.
Yeah.
In an American setting. That could be very revolutionary because it's still their voice.
Yeah.
It's just in English. So you're not having to bring in the voice actors that are doing a horrible job speaking in English. And so you just watch the subtitles anyways because it's like because why not? But the only time there's a whole slew of French films and Italian films and even Scottish films that are very much written that I don't think we access because the dialogue is so heavy that it's really fast and you're just reading. And I think that happens
like Monty Python.
I think it's
I'm kidding.
I think it's the same way they say like a lot of Sundance films don't do well internationally. Well, lots of times if you go to the Sundance films, they're very dialogue heavy. Yeah. So it's this unless they speak English, which not every country, not everyone in every country speaks English. They're not going to watch those movies either because they're just having to focus on the subtitles and make sure they're getting all the dialogue. So that may change things, but I agree with you. I think the international scope's going to expand in a very big way over the next couple of years because it's like great filmmakers that are doing kind of great stuff. And if they're not obligated to they always like run it's their first English speaking film. It's like, we're going to be in this different arena where they don't need to make English speaking films. They can continue to make the films in their countries. Yeah. Well, and also it's the Hollywood system has had an ecosystem that has worked amazingly well, created a lot of movies. And if they're holding on to things and not letting things change and move and people move in and out, then it can stale up and then you can shift. It could shift. And all of a sudden, what's crazy is one of the things
Hollywood could become Detroit. Yeah. No, it could be. Yeah.
Well, everyone's moving studios all over the place.
There you go.
You're not wrong at all in that context. But they really do need, just to go back to Seth Rogen, you can feel the love that he has for Hollywood and filmmaking. They really need to start being more and more concerned about who they're hiring. If they want to save Hollywood, they need a bunch of people that really actually love Hollywood. Yeah. And like have them in there and have them making decisions.
Yeah, well, hopefully I think we've had a great conversation. Yeah. I had some other questions, but I liked what we talked about more. Yeah. But thanks for coming, Robert.
Thanks.
Did I say like and subscribe? Please like and subscribe. We've had 30,000 views in the past 3 weeks, but I'd like more subscribers. It makes me happy. So if you subscribe, me and my assistant will notice it and be like, wow, we have more subscribers. So thanks for coming, Robert.
Thanks for having me.
And we really enjoyed this conversation. Really great insights. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.